Everybody, just wanted to plug again. If you did not get your copy, you didn't get your copy of Haggadah Pesach, right? It's for sale here. Also, some other kuntrasim which are also quite good, if I may say so myself. Well, this is 20. No, this one's 20. This one's 15. Okay, the one without color is just 15. So, if you want, get your copy. Why do you need Haggadah Pesach? Because if you are Jewish, which I assume you all are, there are a few prerequisites for offering Korban Pesach. Then, first of all, you have to be circumcised. I think we're all, in a good, good situation with that. You also have to be ritually pure, and that you can do by at least going to the mikvah. Korban Pesach has the amazing allowance that one who is tamei mace, that is, he was not sprinkled with the water with the ashes of the red heifer, can still eat of the Korban Pesach, as long as he's in the majority. Okay, and most of us are in that situation. We are tamei mace, but if the Korban Pesach had been offered this last year, that would not have been a problem, as long as we all properly immersed in the mikvah. So then we could have Korban Pesach, and you'd sit it down at your table. You couldn't eat it here. You couldn't eat it across the street. It's puzzle here. You'd have to be in the proper part of the old city, and not even most of the old city, just like the southern half of the old city. You could eat Korban Pesach there, but you would not know what to do because you didn't get the Haggadah yet. Okay? If you would bring your Maxwell House or Art School Haggadah there, it would tell you to do the wrong thing, as we reviewed before. So get your copy, at least get it before Passover. Well, I've tried. I've never succeeded. Okay? And to my knowledge, we don't have anybody living who has partaken of Korban Pesach. Also, we haven't actually succeeded in offering any korbanos yet. But also, I'm also happy to report, have I been here since the summer? Was I here in the fall? I have good news. I was saying this also at the other place yesterday. I'm reminded of romantic times back in, let's say, the 1800s, where the Shadarim would come to Jewish communities and Chutzlaretz collecting for the four holy cities to support the old Yishuv, right? And they talk about other things, Eretz Yisrael, at least there's a growing Yishuv. It's small, but it's the beginning of something. And then in the 1920s, you had the JNF and all the other Zionist organizations and people giving money to reclaim the homeland and reforest the homeland, and things are really progressive. Yeah? Good. So I have good news. So you always have news from Eretz Yisrael to the Chutzlaretz about what's happening. By the 1940s, the world is being destroyed by a war. So people already talking about in the 1930s. There's Medina Baderech. They say there's a state on the way. There's already a Jewish community, hundreds of thousands of people. They have democratic institutions. They have the beginnings of a state. And then we hear about there's actually a Jewish state, Jewish territory. There's a Jewish army. Things are actually improving. We hear about 67. There's some great territorial expansion. Things are going. Now, many of us are comfortable. We're living here in Jerusalem. What is the next stage? The next stage is, of course, returning to the Beis HaMikdash. And we've sort of gotten a little bit lazy about that. I went to the JNF building, which is down the block that way. It's on Karen Yesod Street. The JNF and the other one, the United Israel Appeal, and the Sochnut, and the rest of those classic upstart Zionist organizations have now become the establishment, and they all have nice big offices, and it doesn't seem that they're doing much this current century. And I went to them and I said, you have to move ahead with building the temple now. They should be trying to reclaim the temple now, so we have to get the Jews into the next stage. But unfortunately, like you read their establishment, I wouldn't say propaganda, but their publications, for example, this is off the radar, right? They're talking about settlements, okay, building and upkeeping the state, but we're not talking about going to the temple. I have good news. As someone who tries to regularly go to visit the temple, even in its state of destruction, just as Maimonides did, there's been improvements. There used to be you could not daven there. So you have to just walk in the circle around and get out. And if you stopped, if you're muttering prayers, they would arrest you. Or worse. And then eventually, the police. The Jewish ones. Oh. Now there are more, the locked people, they can't actually touch you just because they've walkie-talkies. They should. Without them, we could say Yimach Shalom. Okay? Not in Aramaic, so it wasn't recognized. And eventually, he told them, it's supposed to be Amidah, not Halicha. That's how you're supposed to pray. But whatever. But eventually, they got enough to so they could stop and pray for a little bit, even though the guards are telling them, hurry up, just Chazaras shots or just this and that. So prayers were slowly improving until we had full minyanim, full service, no talis and tefillin yet, but you could stop and pray out loud. And they have a minyan and birkas kohanim. And in the summer, another mitzvah came back. A mitzvah yisoma came back, and that is proper prostration. Prostration means get down on the floor. Now here you cannot prostrate yourself to God. Why? Because this is a stone floor. So if you wish to prostrate yourself here, which they used to do every single day, that's when the field of time was, you have to cover the floor. But in the temple, which according to the general understanding, includes the entire temple mount, which is paved with stones, it is permissible to prostrate oneself from God without having to cover the floor. And that's what people have done surreptitiously or just to stick it to the guard. I myself have tried a few times to prostrate myself in prayer, probably not with Kishut Yadayim Raglayim, but at least touching the head to the floor, and like they do on Yom Kippur, and I've gotten away with it. One time they caught me. And others have done so every now and then, but at their own risk. And now it became a public thing. But since the summer, thank God, now prostration has returned. And the general practice is people prostrate themselves before they start to pray, and then at Nefilas Apayim, when they say Tachanun, after Shmon Esrei, and at Aleinu L'Shabeach, when they say V'anachnu kol mishtachavim modim. And that is happening now. So that has been a major improvement. And they're singing and clapping. On days when they say Hallel loud, and they're given a lot of time. If you get to the 7 o'clock minyan, the VIPs, you will have a full minyan, just like they do at the Kotel, except you have to do, with the nusach of Harabayas, which is significantly different. You don't say anything, you say Baruch Shem Tov Malchut Le'olam after every bracha for Shmon Esrei. The Chasima is different. And you get to pray, and they even sit down and they have Torah study afterwards. There's no prayer books, but your phone has basically everything on it. You upload to your phone the prayers and I guess the daf that you want to study when you're up there, whatever it is. So this has returned, and now we're going to push the envelope for talis and tefillin. On Chol HaMoed Sukkos this year, Chol HaMoed Sukkos, we daven there, Shachris and Musa. We even had Aravos and Lulavim, a set of lulav. This time, they didn't have to go through such lengths to smuggle it, and they were able to do it more in the open. And no one touched my Aravos. We walked around holding our Aravos, and no one took it from my hand and threw it in the garbage this time. Aravos are a mitzvah, separate from the lulav every single day of Sukkot in the temple. And Netilas lulav is a mitzvah every single day, d'oraisa, in the temple. And that's what we did this year. No, I wasn't. They didn't let us up on Shabbos, so I was there on Sunday. Okay? Nafkamina. On Chol HaMoed Sukkos this year in the temple, we did everything except offer sacrifice. But there was prostration and lulav and arava and everything. People don't wear tefillin here on Chol HaMoed, so it didn't make a difference. Perhaps a couple times we did, but notwithstanding, we were doing the maximum we could, and we're getting away with it. That's why I invite everybody. Don't let the train, leave. Don't leave the station. Jump on the bandwagon now, because things are improving. And it's only going to get better. The more Jews are going, the more it's going to get ahead. I think every year we get closer to Korban Pesach. And here's the worry. If they succeed in doing Korban Pesach, God willing, all of those who are in Jerusalem who did not make an attempt to join will be liable for kares. Now that is a very severe thing. Okay? Perhaps maybe that's why we should tell people don't run ahead with Korban Pesach until everybody's on board with it. But I'm saying now, we see in the halacha, if those upstarts actually offer a lamb or two and have Korban Pesach, everybody who did not make a legitimate attempt to join them will be held accountable. Now that's kind of scary. Everybody who didn't join Moses on the march out of Egypt that morning, you had, that morning to get out. If you said, I'm a little bit slow, I'm not going out, I'm going to go out tomorrow morning, you did not leave Egypt. Okay? Yeah. You missed the boat. Well, I don't know what you do Gedolim. Okay, everybody's there Gedolim. I'm aware that major poskim have told people every time Pesach rolls around, buy a share of Korban Pesach. Rabbis of Bnei Brak are involved in these things, and when it comes around this year, you'll see sometimes there'll be announcements. You can catch it. The Machon Shilo has been saying this all the time. Rav Ariel and Rav Dov Lior have been telling people this for decades now, and they're not the only ones. Okay, Rabbanei here are telling people, buy a share of a Korban Pesach and make sure at least to get to mikvah on Erev Pesach and dunk properly, so that if, God willing, we actually hear the announcement, they succeed in offering Korban Pesach, you can participate. You didn't go to mikvah. Well, yeah, far away. Derech Choka. Said all the people in Jerusalem. I'm looking around. I think everybody here is Derech Krova. Correct? People live in this neighborhood even. This neighborhood is way too close. What? The Temple Mount. Well, God willing, that's the plan. There was a fellow who got quite close with his lamb, but you need Kohanim. I'm just saying, things are improving. This will happen. We believe that this will happen, and this is supposed to happen. We also prayed at the Seder last year. Isn't that what we're looking forward to? Isn't that what you're planning? I don't know. I thought that's what we're hoping. Last year we were, wherever we were, having Pesach, just matzah and maror and charoshes. And this year we're actually going to have Korban Pesach. If you really believed it, if you really meant it, you said L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim. I don't know. I think that most people really didn't mean it. It's okay. You can just say I didn't mean it. Yeah. Well, no, Florida. It used to be the minhag is to go to Florida, but that's not the real minhag. Okay? You have to get ready. You prayed for it. Just be careful what you pray for. Okay. The restoration of the temple means that this year there will be Korban Pesach. That's what you believe in. Don't tell me, I don't believe in that, I don't want that. That's a horrible thing. Okay? You've been waiting for this. The ladies are telling you about Korban Pesach. That's hope. Okay? So you have to put now we have to put our money where our mouths are. Okay. We're continuing the Rambam over here. And this last halacha in the Hilchos Kilo, the Rambam says, Toys, Mincha Musaf time roll around. You haven't done Musaf and it's Mincha time. What goes first? Mincha, because that's Tadir. So he holds like Chazal and not like Rabbi Yehuda here. Let's see a little bit about Hanukkah. I checked the calendar. Hanukkah is kind of easy. Hanukkah is a holiday, not a non-biblical Jewish holiday that begins next week. Right? And now, what is Hanukkah about? Hanukkah, if I don't want to surprise anybody, Hanukkah celebrates a historical situation, whereby the Jews in Eretz Yisrael, centered around Jerusalem, had lost control of the temple. If you believe it, the Temple Mount was basically bereft of any Jewish worship. There was a foreign power that had control of the Temple Mount, and they did not allow, get this, the Jewish people to worship as per Judaism at the temple. Do you believe that? It's happened before. And a group of Jewish religious extremists who believed in imposing Orthodox Judaism on other Jews. For example, they wrote about how they made sure that every Jew was circumcised. They imposed and also keeping the Sabbath, they imposed their Sabbath and their circumcision on the other Jews, because for a while they were actually pushing them the other way. There was a group that was basically trying to outlaw the Sabbath and circumcision and keeping Rosh Chodesh and the rest of it. So these group of Jews, led by a priestly family that goes back to Aaron, they regained control of most of the country over a series of wars, and the temple in Jerusalem. The temple was still standing. The edifice of the temple it was an empty shell. The doors of the temples and its gates were gone because those had been made out of wood-coated gold. So those then been despoiled. The vessels of the temple were also made out of precious metal. So those were all despoiled. They didn't have a menorah. The Mizbeach was made out of stone. It stuck to the ground, but they had to remove that Mizbeach and build a new one. Basically, the temple was an empty shell. And they spent time rebuilding a new altar, makeshift kalim, and as they defeated their enemies, get this, they defeated their enemies. You know what they did with their enemies' property? They seized their enemies' property and used that, the precious metals or the proceeds thereof, to refurnish the temple. Can you believe that? Nowadays, we're in a very similar situation whereby the Temple Mount is under the control of basically the very same people who are at war with us right now all around our country, in the south and the north and the east. We are beset by these very same types of Ishmaelites who also control the Temple Mount and do not allow any form of service there. And there's actually even a question among so-called big great rabbis if we should be seizing their property. I almost had to tear Kriya from this idea that they said, Jewish people, soldiers, your grandsons, conquer Gaza. They risk their lives to do so, but they're not allowed to take all the spoils there. Ridiculous. They conquered southern Lebanon, and they're even saying, no, we can't take their property. No, God gave it to you. That's what David did. That's what Saul did. That's what great Jewish kings did, and that's what Maccabee did. You take it from them because we have to refurnish the temple. Hanukkah celebrates that which the vast majority of Jews, even the Orthodox Jews today, want no part of, either consciously or subconsciously. Okay? If today Maccabee and his brothers were to show up and actually declare their intentions to do such a thing. They're going to seize the Temple Mount and kill all the foreigners who are there, and try to take the war to them and seize their property in order to refurnish this temple by force and make a Jewish holiday about this. Would you be on board with that? Okay, ask yourself that. Before you light that candle and you do Pirsumei Nisa, ask yourself, if you would have this opportunity today, would you be on whose side would you be? And if you're not on Yehuda Maccabee's side today, then reconsider celebrating the holiday. Or you can start from the beginning and say, just like the sages told me I have to celebrate this holiday way back when, so too, if it would come up again, I would also be on the side of Yehuda Maccabee. And that's how we should think. That's what we're doing. When we light these candles, we're saying, hopefully this will happen soon one more time because we really need it to happen soon. Okay? This was the first time in history. It's not going to be the last time in history. So we're looking forward to it. So we have a commandment to light the menorah. Lighting the menorah is basically an affirmation of this idea. That's how the Rambam begins explaining to us what Hanukkah is all about. Okay? They did this. You can read the history. Rambam does not do that with any other holiday. Rambam doesn't say, Purim is about, also involving a lot of wars, by the way, how many Amalekites and other enemies of the Jews met their deaths on Purim? Well, quite a few thousand, many. Okay? Throughout the Persian Empire, not just in Shushan. Shushan, they hung Haman's 10 sons. Haman was dead by Passover. But we celebrate these things. God willing, we should have these, like the Spartic version of Al Nisim, the older version says, just like you made Nisim and the flows back then, do so for us now. What were the Nisim and the flows in Yehuda Maccabee's time? Milchama. Okay? You have to smite the bad guys. And Jews have become too docile, and they forgot about this. But that's what we celebrate.